On this week's Peace and Prosperity, we discussed a bone of contention between North Korea and the U.S. during their failed talks in Hanoi, Yeongbyeon plus additional measures for sanctions relief. We also take a look at U.S. President Trump's announcement on the withdrawal of additional sanctions on North Korea and whether it signals a departure from America's maximum pressure campaign. Lastly, we meet a South Korean violinist who is about to realize his long-held vision of forming an inter-Korean orchestra.
Hello and welcome to Arirang TV's new Foreign Affairs and Security program, Peace and Prosperity. I'm your host, Won Hyung-joon. On this program, we'll keep you up to date for the latest developments and key issues of the week as the two Koreas take their journey together toward the lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. On our very first episode, we'll take a look at one of the sticking points that led to the breakdown of the Hanoi summit. US President Donald Trump said his negotiating team wanted more than Yeongbyeon in return for sanctions relief for North Korea. But what exactly more than Yeongbyeon mean? Here's a short clip.
We are not going to do denuclearization incrementally. The president has been clear on that, and that is a position around which the U.S. government has complete unity. Our goal, our objective, is the final, fully verified denuclearization of North Korea.
미국 측은 용변 지구 핵시설 폐기 조치 외에 한 가지를 더 해야 한다고 끝까지 주장했으며, 따라서 미국이 우리의 제안을 수용할 준비가 되어 있지 않다는 것이 명백해져 있습니다.
The high-stakes summit in Hanoi between the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. fell apart after the two sides failed to narrow their differences. Pyongyang favored a phased, simultaneous approach to denuclearization, while Washington called for an all-in-one deal. The U.S. demanded more than the dismantling of Yeongbyeon in return for sanctions relief. Yeongbyeon is known as the heart of North Korea's nuclear program. It is a huge complex comprised of nearly 400 buildings scattered over 9 million square meters, including 3 reactors, a fuel fabrication facility, and a plutonium reprocessing plant. The complex also includes a uranium enrichment plant capable of building more than 2 nuclear weapons every year. But U.S. President Donald Trump made it clear that the closure of the Yeongbyeon complex alone wouldn't satisfy Washington.
So he was willing to do Yeongbyeon, but you wanted more than that, I assume.
We had to have more than that, yeah. We had to have more than that.
Including
And
the
we brought-
uranium,
we-
including
yeah,
the second uranium enrichment plant.
Exactly. And we brought many points up that I think they were surprised that we knew.
On top of the shutdown of Yeongbyeon, the U.S. demanded a list of the regime's uranium enrichment facilities. Seoul and Washington suspect that North Korea have secret uranium enrichment facilities in multiple locations, including Yeongbyeon. However, it's impossible to fully assess the size of the country's uranium enrichment program unless it provides a complete list.
무기급 우라늄을 생산하는 것은 이 핵심적인 원심 분리기, 이것을 돌릴 수 있는 전력, 이것만 있으면 가능한 겁니다. 흔히 말해서 지하에서도 충분하게 숨길 수 있는 그런 부분입니다.
Where are the other suspected uranium enrichment sites located? BBC and the Washington Post pointed to the industrial city of Kangsong. The Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey and the Institute for Science and International Security estimated that Kangsong is twice the size of Yeongbyeon and could contain 2,000 to 4,000 centrifuges. But North Korea analysis website 38 North said Kangsong is an unlikely candidate for a covert uranium enrichment facility, citing its minimal security and close access to a highway.
과거 뉴욕타임스에 났던 강선이라는 지역이나 최근에 또 언론에 제기된 분강이라는 지역이 언급되곤 있는데 구체적으로 어딘지 그리고 거기에 얼마나 원심분리기가 존재하는지 파악된 정보가 공개된 건 없고요. 그렇기 때문에 미국으로서도 자신들의 정보와 북한의 신고가 맞물려 들어가야지 정확히 파악할 수 있다는 입장인 것 같고 그렇기 때문에 영변보다도 미공개 농축 우라늄 시설이 북한 비핵화에서 더 중요한 의미를 가진다고 평가하는 것 같습니다.
Observers say the additional measures the U.S. wants may include a complete freeze on any other weapons of mass destruction, including chemical and biological. In response to Washington's demands, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un only offered to dismantle the Yeongbyeon nuclear facility. As a result, the two leaders returned home empty-handed, without any agreement. North Korea broke its long silence since the failed talks, with its vice foreign minister blaming the U.S. for the summit breakdown.
명백히 하건대 지금과 같은 미국의 강도적 입장은 사태를 분명 위험하게 만들 것입니다.
She also threatened to halt negotiations with the U.S., raising tensions between Pyongyang and Washington. Meanwhile, new activity was observed at Dongchangri missile launch site, which North Korea promised to dismantle.
미국에 대한 압박의 수단으로 활용하려는 그런 차원에서 재건의 가능성은 있다고 생각합니다. 외형적인 거칠의 부분만 복구를 했지 실질적으로 안 내부에서 가지고 광 케이블이라든지 이런 시설은 전혀 복구된 정황이 없기 때문에 실질적으로 중장거리 미사일이라든지 인공위성을 발사하기 위한 재건의 가능성은 낮다고 분석합니다.
How will North Korea respond? Experts warn against its salami tactics, where it slices the denuclearization process into small steps and demands concessions for each step.
북한의 비핵화 대상을 너무나도 잘게 썰 수 있기 때문에 그러한 협상이 바람직하지 않다. 그렇기 때문에 전반적인 로드맵에 합의하면서 북한도 단계적인 비핵화 조치를 큰 덩어리로 가져가야 된다. 영변 이외의 핵시설, 핵물질, 핵무기 이렇게 한 4단계로 가져가는 것이 가장 현실적이고 바람직하다고 생각합니다.
They also stressed Seoul's role is instrumental in bringing the two sides back to the negotiating table.
과거 역사적 경험적 사례에 비춰볼 때 대화 중단의 기간이 길면 오해가 생기고 그 오해가 감정으로 나타난다면 다시 대립과 대결로 갈 수가 있습니다. 한국의 중재자적인 역할 이것이 좀 더 서둘러갈 필요가 있고 그렇다면 적어도 4월 말 5월 초순경에는 북미 간에 더 대화탁에 나올 가능성 배제할 수 없다고 전망합니다.
All eyes are on how Pyongyang will react to Washington's latest gesture to resume dialogue.
For today's discussion, we are joined by Dr. Kim Jin-ah, Research Fellow at Korea Institute for Defense Analysis. Thanks for joining us for our first ever episode.
Thanks for having me today.
Great. Some critics would argue that all-in-one or all-or-nothing approach will be too much to be accepted by North Koreans. So we might have to consider making small steps as first steps leading to the ultimate outcomes, the big deal between the United States and North Korea. So what do you think of this idea of North Korea giving up nuclear facility in Yeongbyeon complex in exchange for some kind of economic sanction relief by the United States in a smaller scale?
Well, that's exactly what North Korea says. North Korea believes that opening up Yeongbyeon can be a small step toward the denuclearization, because there's no confidence building measures between the two countries. So North Korea wants to have a step-by-step approach toward the denuclearization. But from US point of view, the end state is not clear at all. So it cannot trust North Korea in the following, negotiations. So that there is that kind of concern. And lifting sanctions is not easy for the U.S. government because the foundation of the existing UN sanctions on North Korea was decided by not only the U.S. but also other key members of the UN Security Council. So the U.S. cannot just decide all of a sudden whether to lift the sanctions or not, even though it is partial sanctions.
So unless the end state is clearly defined by North Koreans, then even small deals are very difficult to be made by the United States because you can't really estimate the correct value of those small concessions made by North Korea. We have been hearing kind of mixed messages coming from Washington after the collapse of the Hanoi summit meeting. The Treasury Department announced additional sanction measures on North Korea. But a few days later, not even a few days, the White House had a tweeting message that, we don't need additional economic sanctions. President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un are in very good terms. So what is the position of the United States at this point, and what do you make of this?
Well, actually, we don't know clearly whether President Trump opposed the idea of adding two Chinese shipping companies to the existing sanctions list, or if President Trump opposed the idea of enforcing special measures, sanctions measures, in response to sanctions violation, because we have no correct information about that. But the role of the Treasury is investigate, monitor all the non-compliance, and also update the sanctions list. It's hard to imagine that the President of the United States was trying to undo what has been done already. But it is possible that this happened during the review process, because it's the role of the Treasury to determine what kind of specific measures should be taken by the U.S. government. But it's up to the President of the United States to decide whether to implement these recommended actions or not. So obviously President Trump wants to have a negotiation with Chairman Kim. So he wants to keep the momentum of dialogue alive. So I think he has some discretionary measures, because within the existing sanctions regime, there are two different types of sanctions measure, mandatory and discretionary measures. So especially when it comes to secondary boycotts, it's up for the president mostly to determine whether to implement those sanctions or not. As far as I know, the president of the United States can have some considerations of the issues related to national security issues or humanitarian issues. So based upon that consideration and consideration of the future talks with the DPRK, I think that the President Trump made a decision not to add up more sanctions measures on North Korea.
We have witnessed the sudden pullout of staffs by North Korean government in the Kaesong liaison office, but 3 days later, they sent them back to assume regular operation. What do you make of this? Is it North Korean attempt to put pressure on South Korea, or expression of confusion, or what?
Well, North Korea actually withdrew its officials from the liaison office after the U.S. government imposed sanctions. Okay. And it sent back partially the DPRK officials back to the liaison office after President Trump said it opposed additional sanctions measures. So there's some correlation, not causality though. So many speculate that this kind of change has something to do with the US policy on North Korea. But I have another opinion. I think the DPRK government did not disconnect all the channels between the two Koreas. The military hotline was alive, and the channel between intelligence agencies was alive as well. So that means North Korea may want to just signal that the inter-Korean channel is a very weak link. In a way not to jeopardize the entire inter-Korean relationship overall. And I also think that there's two different messages. One for South Korea, which is, well, North Korea is holding the upper hand in dealing with inter-Korean issues. And another message may go to the U.S. It can be such that the U.S. has to directly deal with North Korea, not via South Korea.
Okay. My final question is about what South Korean government needs to do as a mediator or main player between North Korea and the United States. What kind of future do you foresee to take place between the two Koreas in the short term?
In the short term, there can be some cooling off period.
Cooling off?
Yes, because obviously North Korea has been very much passive for the last few months in talking about inter-Korean projects. And these reconciliatory projects include joint excavation of the remains of the Korean War and a video reunion of the separated families. The real question is what North Korea can get from those reconciliatory projects. Not much, I believe, for the future negotiation with the U.S. So I think if North Korea is rational, well, North Korea may find it in their interest to just slow down a little bit the speed of inter-Korean exchange and cooperation for the time being in order to get some traction from the U.S.
Dr. Kim, thank you so much for sharing your insight and analysis.
Thank you very much.
There is a violinist who has worked toward his vision of inter-Korean orchestra for the past 10 years. Now, his dream is about to come true. Here's more of the story.
In October 2013, a heartfelt rendition of Longing for Mount Kumgangsan echoed throughout the conference hall of the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission at Panmunjom. The peace concert marking the 60th anniversary of the founding of the commission was organized by a young South Korean violinist named Won Hyung-joon.
사실 그분들이 이제 외국인인데도 불구하고 한국에서 분단의 이제 그 경계선이 있고 같은 한국인이지만은 거기까지 갈 수밖에 없는 이제 음악으로 그것을 이제 전달할 수밖에 없는 그 고충이라고 할까요? 그것을 이제 그분들도 이해를 하신 것 같아요.
The first ever peace concert at Panmunjom was not a random event, but the first fruit of one's years-long efforts. Inspired by the work of the West Eastern Divan Orchestra made up of young Israeli and Arab musicians, one began to examine the role of music.
이스라엘 청소년들과 팔레스타인 대립되는 그 청소년들을 이제 하나의 오케스트라를 만들어서 세계를 다니면서 투어하는 거에 상당히 감동을 제가 받았습니다. 그래서 이제 같은 음악인이니까 우리는 이제 남북이 분단돼 있고 그래서 음악으로 남과 북의 청소년들을 하나의 오케스트라로 만들 수 있지 않을까 그렇게 생각을 하게 되었습니다.
He was the organizer of the One People, One Harmony concert, marking the 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese rule in 2015. But the project, which got the green light from Seoul's Unification and Defense Ministries, the UN command in Pyongyang, was canceled last minute.
측의 합창단과 우리 남측의 오케스트라단이 판문점 그 경계선을 두고 베토벤 9번 합창교향곡을 연주를 하려고도 기획을 했었는데 당시 이제 뭐 목함지뢰 사건이 나면서 우리가 이제 그 DMZ에 들어갈 수 없는 그런 상황도 벌어지고 그때 사실 그 북한 채널은 끊어졌다고 볼 정도로 상당히 안 좋았거든요.
But it didn't stop Won from pursuing his dream. In the latest move to bring the two Koreas together through music, he has ventured into another collaborative project. It all began with a documentary film featuring the City Symphony project by MIT professor Todd McCover, which combined music and technology to capture the sound and spirit of a city.
그분은 그 음악을 통해서 그 도시를 재건하려는 그 모습이 저한테는 너무 인상적이었어요. 그래서 제가 영화를 보는 도중에도 내가 2015년을 마지막으로 이 남북 오케스트라 합동 공연을 안 했는데 왠지 저분을 만나서 저분이랑 같이 우리가 프로젝트를 하게 된다면은 할 수도 있을 것 같다라는 생각이 들어서.
The two men decided to join forces to compose the Symphony for the Koreas, and McCover recently visited South Korea to discuss the details. The MIT professor is an acclaimed composer and inventor and was named 2016 Composer of the Year by Musical America. His City Symphony project aims to produce a musical portrait of a city by combining its different sounds through a mobile app.
I use regular music like an orchestra or a band, but we also listen to the actual sounds of the city. It might be traffic or people talking or nature sounds, and see what's special about that place. We combine that with the music sounds, but then I ask everybody in the city to work with me to make this composition. So it's a big collaboration.
The first part of the joint project will involve collecting different sounds from South and North Korea using a mobile app. McCover believes in the power of technology to bridge the geopolitical gap between the two Koreas.
We can make special software for this project that makes it especially easy to share sounds and send sounds, and maybe you don't even need words. Just listen and share and combine. So I think technology will make it very, very interesting for people to communicate.
What was once seen as a pipe dream now has more potential than ever. One is confident that communicating through music will be the first step towards inter-Korean unity.
북측에도 제가 가진 채널을 통해서 이 프로젝트 이제 계획을 알릴 것이고, 그리고 한국에서도 지금이라도 할 수 있는 우리 한국 학생들 또는 연주자들 또 일반 시민들 함께 이 프로젝트의 그 목소리를 어떻게 담을 수 있는지 그걸 바로 시작을 할 것입니다.
This spring, we hope to hear the sound of harmonious music closing the decades-old gap between the two Koreas.
This is a section of this program, Peace and Prosperity, to explain one keyword delineated from today's discussion. What is today's keyword? It is liaison office. What is a liaison office? It's an office to help communicate between two nations before they agree on official diplomatic normalization. The term liaison must be very familiar to many of you viewers from the movie Dangerous Liaison, meaning contact, communication. It is a normal procedure for diplomatic normalization. At the lowest level of diplomatic normalization process, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of each country would have interest section, which will be developed into liaison office, then consular office, then eventually embassy. The Kaesong Liaison Office is the product of the Panmunjom Declaration of the Inter-Korean Summit meeting on April 27, 2018, and it became in operation on September 14, 2018. It is a good barometer to gauge the future of inter-Korean communication and cooperation. And if things go well between United States and North Korea, then we will see both sides discussing opening liaison office in each other's capital city as the first step toward restoration of trust and diplomatic normalization between the two adversaries since the time of the Korean War, as they agreed in Singapore summit meeting last June. And this is where we wrap things up. We hope you enjoyed our new program. We'll be back next week. Thank you.